My own children kicked me out of the Christmas dinner table. They said I was in the way, that my presence made my daughters-in-law uncomfortable. But when I discovered what they did to my retirement and the plot of land my late husband left behind, I realized I was never a mother to them. I was just a convenient signature. Leave a comment letting me know what state or country you are watching from. I want to know how far this story will reach. The words came out of my oldest son's mouth, as if he were just telling me it was going to rain. Mom, the whole family is getting together for Christmas, but you are not going to sit at the main table. I was standing there with the grocery bags in my hands, having just gotten back from the supermarket, my legs aching the way they do when you are past 70 years old. I stood frozen in the middle of the kitchen of the house that I had helped build brick by brick, feeling the blood drain from my face. I waited for him to laugh, to say it was just a bad joke, but Richard just opened the refrigerator and pulled out a beer. He did not even look me in the eye. I stayed there holding that bag of tomatoes, onions, and a chuck roast I had bought, thinking about making him that pot roast he always loved. My chest tightened in a way that was not just sadness, it was pure humiliation. "Excuse me, what did you say, son?" My voice came out low, almost a whisper. He took a sip of his beer before answering, still not facing me. "Sarah thinks it is better this way. She is putting together a very elaborate dinner this year. You know how she is. Important people are coming, senior partners from her law firm. You can eat in the kitchen. You will be more comfortable in the kitchen of my own house. Because that house was still mine. It was still in my name, even after Richard convinced me to let him and his family move in. It is just temporary, Mom, just until we get back on our feet. That had been 4 years ago. I had moved into the back, to that little room that used to be a storage closet, and I let them take over the rest of the house. Because he was my son. Because family supports each other. Because I grew up learning that a mother never denies her children anything. I set the grocery bag on the table slowly, as if any sudden movement might break whatever inside of me was still holding together. "And what about Mark?" I asked, trying to keep my voice from cracking. Mark was my youngest son, always the more affectionate one, the more present one. Or so I thought. Richard shrugged. "Mark agrees. In fact, he was the one who suggested it. He said that sometimes you say things in front of people that make them uncomfortable." That felt like a slap in the face. Uncomfortable. I made my own children uncomfortable just by existing, by speaking, by being alive. I had raised those 2 boys all by myself after my husband died. Arthur passed away when Richard was 15 and Mark was 12. A massive heart attack. There was not even time to say goodbye. I was left a widow at 42 years old, with no real trade, without having finished high school, but with 2 boys to raise and a house to maintain. I worked cleaning houses, cooking at a local diner, ironing other people's laundry. I woke up at 4 in the morning and did not get back until 9 at night. My hands grew calloused, my back hunched over, but my boys never went hungry, and now, at 73 years old, they were kicking me away from the Christmas table. I did not cry in front of him. I learned a long time ago not to cry in front of those who hurt you, because tears become weapons in the hands of the heartless. I took the bags and started putting the groceries away. Richard stood there a while longer, drinking his beer as if everything was perfectly normal, and then he walked out without even saying good afternoon. When I heard the front door slam, I sat down on the old kitchen chair and let the tears fall. It was not just the humiliation of Christmas, it was everything leading up to it. Sarah's passive, aggressive comments about how I used too much hot water when I showered. Emily, Mark's wife, making snide remarks about how my worn-out clothes were an embarrassment when guests came over. The way they spoke to me, like I was a burdensome child, taking up too much space. But I swallowed it all because they were my children, because I loved them, because I thought that was what family meant. Enduring, forgiving, keeping your mouth shut. I could not sleep that night. I lay in that cramped little room staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything I had done for those boys. The sleepless nights when they ran a fever, the shoes I never bought for myself so I could afford their school supplies, the times I ate nothing but rice and eggs so they could have meat on their plates. And then I remembered something that had been pushed to the back of my mind for years. The land. When Arthur died, he left the house and a plot of land out in the Texas Hill Country, near where he grew up. It was a good piece of property, with access to water, fully fenced. Back then, it was not worth much. It was out in the middle of nowhere, a forgotten place. But in recent years, the area had boomed. They built a new highway nearby, and people had started buying up acreage out there to build custom homes. I never did anything with it. The land just sat there, and I paid the low property taxes every year. But it was mine. It was in my name. Or at least, I thought it was. Because suddenly, lying in that dark room, a freezing wave of doubt washed over me. Was it still in my name? The next morning, I left early. I did not say a word to anyone. I took the bus downtown to the county clerk's office. That old building smelled like damp paper and stale air. The young woman at the desk was polite. She helped me run a search. I gave her my social security number. I waited as she typed. "Which properties are you looking to inquire about?" she asked. "Anything registered under my name." My heart was racing. She clicked her mouse a few times. She frowned. "I am only showing one property here, a residential home in the city limits. And the land out in the hill country? There should be a plot of land." She searched again, more carefully this time. "Nothing is coming up. When was it registered?" "Over 30 years ago." She ran a few more searches. Then she looked at me with an expression that was a mix of pity and concern. "There was a title transfer 2 years ago. The land is no longer in your name." I felt the floor drop out from under me. "What do you mean? A transfer?" "I never signed anything. Right here it says, a gift deed transferring ownership to." She looked at her screen. "Is Richard Davis related to you?" "My son. My oldest son had taken my land, without telling me, without asking for my permission, without me ever consciously signing a thing." "Do you have the date?" I asked, my voice trembling. "March 12th, 2023. I remembered that day. Richard had taken me to a notary public's office, claiming he needed to update some paperwork for the house, something about the property taxes. I signed a stack of papers without reading them thoroughly, trusting him, because he was my son, because a mother trusts her children, and he had robbed me blind. I walked out of the county clerk's office with shaky legs, my vision blurred. People rushed past me on the sidewalk, caught up in their own busy lives. And there I was, an old woman conned by her own flesh and blood. I sat on a bench in a nearby park because my legs simply could not carry me any further. I sat there for I do not know how long, watching the pigeons, watching the children play, watching the world spin on while mine collapsed entirely. When I got back to the house, Sarah was in the living room with a friend, drinking white wine and laughing loudly. She saw me walk past and did not even say hello. I went straight to my room, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. And that was when the anger finally hit me. Not that hot, explosive anger that makes you scream. It was a cold, calculated anger that burned deep inside, but cast no flame. I had been robbed, humiliated, treated like garbage. By my own children, the people I loved most in this world, the ones I had sacrificed everything for. I opened the drawer of my nightstand. Inside, hidden in an old medicine box, was my cash. I saved almost all of my Social Security checks. I never wasted money on nonsense. I had no vices, no luxuries. I just saved. I did not even know what for, but I saved. I had about $8,000 in cash right there. I counted it bill by bill. It was not a fortune, but it was mine, earned with my sweat, with my years of breaking my back. And nobody was going to take that away from me, too. I grabbed my old cell phone, the hand-me-down Mark gave me when he upgraded his, and looked up a name I had scribbled in a notebook months ago. Mary, an older lady I met in the waiting room at the local clinic, had given me the number of a lawyer who specialized in elder law and charged fair rates. I dialed the number. A man with a calm voice answered. "Law Office of Paul Davis." "Good afternoon. My name is Martha. I need a lawyer." The very next day, I was sitting across from Mr. Dodder, Paul Davis, in a small but spotless office, surrounded by heavy law books and the faint smell of stale coffee. He was a man in his 50s, with graying hair and a sharp, attentive gaze. He offered me a glass of water, pulled his chair closer, and said, "Tell me everything, Martha. Take your time." And I told him. I told him about the property that vanished from my name, about the signatures I gave without knowing what I was signing, about the Christmas dinner they banned me from, about the daily humiliations. My voice broke a few times, but I did not shed a single tear. I was done crying over them. The lawyer listened to it all, taking notes in total silence. When I finished, he took a deep breath. You have been the victim of a severe breach of trust, at the very least. Depending on how that deed transfer was executed, we could be looking at real estate fraud or elder financial abuse. I felt my heart race. But he is my son. And that makes the crime worse, Martha, not better. He explained that we could file a civil lawsuit to void the deed transfer, arguing that I was deceived into signing it. He talked about investigations, gathering evidence, and the legal avenues we could take. And then he asked me the question I was most terrified to answer. Are you willing to take this all the way to the end? I stayed quiet, suing my own son, going against my own flesh and blood. Everything inside of me screamed, no, that a mother does not do that you do not wash your dirty laundry in public. But then I remembered Richard's voice telling me I would eat in the kitchen. I remembered the stolen land. I remembered every slight, every time they treated me like a burden. Yes, I answered. Yes, I am. He nodded. Then, let us get started. But brace yourself, Martha. They are not going to like this one bit, and things could get very ugly. Things are already ugly, I told him. Now, they are just going to get truthful. Over the next few days, the lawyer asked for documents. I brought him everything I had. My marriage certificate, Arthur's death certificate, old tax receipts for the land, everything kept safely in a shoebox. Mr. Davis also advised me to try and record conversations, save text messages, anything that could prove a pattern of emotional abuse or intimidation. I started paying attention in a whole new way. When Sarah made a rude comment about me leaving a light on, I wrote it down. When Emily rolled her eyes because I forgot to lock the deadbolt, I wrote it down. Every instance of disrespect became a piece of the record. One afternoon, Richard came home from work and called me into the living room. Mom, we need to talk. He was serious but not nervous. He sat on the sofa like someone about to deliver important news. It is about the land. My heart pounded. I already knew what I had discovered. What land? I played dumb. He sighed, like he was dealing with a stubborn toddler. The property out in the hill country, the one Dad left. You remember it, right? Yes, I remember it. Well, I transferred the deed to my name a while back. You signed the paperwork at the notary, remember? I bit my tongue to keep from exploding. And why did you do that? He spread his hands like the answer was the most obvious thing in the world. Because you are getting older, Mom. It is better if someone who has all their faculties handles property taxes, deeds, and all that red tape. And I am your son. It is only fair. Fair. He had stolen my property, and he thought it was fair. And what if I ever need that land? I asked quietly. Richard let out a laugh. Need it for what, Mom? You live here. You do not pay rent. You have food. You have a roof over your head. What more could you possibly want? Respect, I told him, looking him dead in the eye. I want respect. He went quiet for a second. Then he stood up, clearly annoyed. You are becoming very difficult to deal with, Mom. You used to be so easygoing, and now you are coming up with all this nonsense. You must be losing your marbles. And he walked away. Losing my marbles. As if having a shred of dignity meant I had dementia. I pulled out my cell phone and sent a text message to Mr. Davis, summarizing the conversation. He replied quickly, Perfect. That helps immensely. He is admitting to the transfer, and it is clear there was no informed consent on your end. Keep documenting everything. The days dragged on, and December arrived. The house was filled with Christmas decorations. Sarah hired an interior decorator, strung expensive lights across the front porch, and put up a massive tree in the living room. I helped wherever I could, cleaning up, organizing things, because even after being so humiliated, I still had that foolish habit of wanting to be useful. One afternoon, Emily and Sarah were chatting in the kitchen. I walked in to get a glass of water and overheard them accidentally, or maybe not so accidentally. Did you confirm she is definitely not sitting at the table? That was Emily's voice. Yes, she is staying in the kitchen. Honestly, it is for the best. She chews with her mouth open. It is so embarrassing. They laughed. A low, cruel laugh. I felt my face burn with shame and fury, but I did not say a word. I just filled my glass and walked back to my room, every step feeling as heavy as lead. I sat on my bed and cried. I cried silently, biting down on my own hand to keep from making a sound, because it hurts so incredibly much to be despised by the people you gave birth to, the ones you nursed, the ones you taught how to walk. It hurts in a way that defies explanation. But right in the middle of my tears, I had a moment of pure clarity. I was going to be at their Christmas dinner, but I was not going to stay quiet. The week of Christmas, Mr. Davis called me. "Martha, the lawsuit is filed. We are petitioning to void the deed transfer and requesting a formal investigation into the elder financial abuse. The process server will be delivering the papers to your son in the next few days." My chest tightened. Will it be before Christmas? Most likely on December 23rd. 2 days before Christmas. Richard was going to get served, and all hell was going to break loose. But I was ready. Or at least I thought I was. On December 23rd, I was out on the back patio hanging laundry when I heard the scream. "Mom!" It was Richard, storming out the back door with a stack of papers in his hand, his face beet red with rage. "What the hell is this?" he yelled, waving the papers right in my face. I already knew exactly what it was. The summons. "It is exactly what it looks like," I answered calmly, much calmer than I actually felt. "You sued me?" He was in absolute disbelief. "You sued your own son? You robbed your own mother?" I fired back. "Now we are even." He went pale, then red again. "I did not steal anything. That piece of dirt is not worth a single dollar. Then give it back." Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. Richard gritted his teeth. "You are insane. You have completely lost your mind." "I am not crazy, Richard. I am just tired of being treated like a fool." Sarah poked her head out the back door. "What is all this screaming about?" Richard shoved the papers toward her. "My mother sued me. She is trying to take the land." Sarah looked at me with pure disgust. "Oh, so that is what this is about? You want that filthy plot of land? You are so greedy, Martha. I always knew you had that side to you." "What side?" I asked. "The gold digger side. You see your son becoming successful, and you get jealous. This woman had the absolute nerve to call me greedy while living in my house, eating my food, and taking advantage of me for 4 solid years." I laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had lost all faith in humanity. "Becoming successful with what belongs to me, right, Sarah? What a beautiful success story." She took a step toward me, but Richard held her back. "Enough, Mom. You are going to cancel this lawsuit right this second." "I am not canceling anything," I said firmly. "I am seeing this through to the very end. You do not even have the money to pay for lawyers." I smiled. "Yes, I do. I saved up every penny of my Social Security all these years while you two thought I was too stupid to defend myself." Richard fell silent, processing it all. Then he spoke slowly, his tone turning dangerous. "So you want a war? Fine. But you are not stepping foot in this house for Christmas. You are not sitting at our table. You are not even going to breathe the same air as us. This house is mine," I said quietly. He let out a bitter laugh. "But I am the one living in it. And I am going to make your life a living hell, Mom. You are going to regret this." I did not answer him. I turned my back, walked into my little room, and locked the door. I sat on my bed shivering, not from fear, but from rage and from a strange sense of freedom, because I had finally done what I should have done years ago. I stood up for myself. On the morning of December 24th, Christmas Eve, I was woken up by music blasting at full volume. It was 7 in the morning. Sarah had put on Christmas carols as loud as the speakers would go. I knew it was entirely on purpose, just to annoy me, to remind me who was boss. I got up, washed my face, and got dressed. I was not going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me defeated. I walked out of my room and headed straight to the kitchen. Richard was eating breakfast, looking absolutely miserable. When he saw me, he turned his head away. I grabbed my mug, poured myself some coffee, and sat at the tiny table in the corner. The atmosphere was incredibly tense, as if the air was made of lead. Sarah walked in with a to-do list in her hand. "Martha, since you are going to be hanging around, you might as well wash the dishes left over from last night, and then dust the living room." She did not even look at me. She just barked the order and walked away. I could have argued. I could have screamed that this was my house, that I was not her maid, but I was not going to waste my energy. I washed the dishes in silence. I dusted the living room. I did exactly what she ordered, because I was saving all my strength for what really mattered: my lawsuit, my justice. As the day went on, the house started filling up with people. First, Mark arrived with Emily and their 2 little girls. My granddaughters. The girls ran straight to me and hugged me. "Grandma!" My heart squeezed. They were innocent. They were not to blame for their parents' actions. I hugged them tightly, kissed them, and asked how school was going. Emily immediately pulled the girls away. "Come on, girls. Let us go see the tree Aunt Sarah put up." And she shot me a freezing glare that essentially said, "Do not even think about getting close to them." Mark did not even say hello to me. He walked right past me as if I were a piece of old furniture. Then came the in-laws, the cousins, Richard's co-workers. The house grew loud and festive, and there I was in my corner, invisible, waiting. I stayed in my little room all afternoon. Every now and then, I would step out to use the bathroom and see them laughing, toasting, celebrating. In the dining room sat the massive table, perfectly set with a beautiful tablecloth, expensive china, and crystal glasses. And in the kitchen, a plain little table with one single chair, my designated spot. At 7 at night, Sarah knocked on my door. "Martha, dinner is ready. You can eat in the kitchen now before the rest of us sit down." I took a deep breath. "I'm going to eat dinner with all of you," she scoffed. "No, you are not eating with us. We already explained this to you." I stood up and grabbed my purse, making sure my cell phone was inside. "Sarah, this house is in my name. The deed proves it. I am going to sit at my own dining table." She crossed her arms. "You do not own anything here anymore, and if you insist on causing a scene, we will throw you out on the street right this minute." I walked past her and stepped right into the living room. Everyone was there, seated, waiting for the dinner service to begin. Richard was at the head of the table, Sarah next to him, Mark and Emily, the kids, all the guests. The table was covered in food that I had helped prepare. I stood right there in the entryway. Everyone stopped talking and stared at me. "Mom," Richard said with an exasperated groan. "We already talked about this." "I just want to eat dinner with my family on Christmas," I said simply. Emily let out a loud sigh. "Here we go again." One of the guests, a man I did not recognize, looked totally confused. "What is the problem with her grabbing a seat?" Richard forced a tight smile. "It is just that my mother has some cognitive issues. She gets very confused. We just prefer her to be in a quieter space where she is more comfortable." Issues. Confused. He was trying to make me look like I had dementia in front of total strangers. I felt my throat close up, but I was not going to cry. "Not here. I do not have any cognitive issues, Richard. I just want what is rightfully mine, my seat at the table, my dignity." Sarah stood up, absolutely furious. "That is enough, Martha. You are being completely ridiculous. Either go to your room or get out of this house right now." "I am not leaving my own house," I stated firmly. "Your house?" Mark spoke up for the first time, his voice dripping with contempt. "You do not pay a single dollar around here. We are the ones keeping this roof over our heads." I looked at him. At the son I carried in my arms as a baby, the one I rocked to sleep, the one I shielded from the world, and he was looking at me like I was absolute trash. "I do not pay because you refuse to let me. But the name on the deed is mine, and you all know it." A dead silence fell over the room. Richard stood up slowly. "Mom, this is your last warning. Are you walking to the kitchen, or are you walking out to the street?" My heart was beating out of my chest, but I refused to back down. "Not this time. I am staying right here." He gave Mark a nod. The two of them marched toward me. I stepped back, suddenly terrified. "What are you doing?" "We are putting you right where you belong," Richard said coldly. They grabbed me by the arms, not with brutal violence, but with a forceful grip. They dragged me toward the kitchen while I tried to break free. "Let go of me! Let go of me!" I screamed, but not a single person at that table stood up to help me. No one said a word. They just watched. They shoved me into the kitchen chair. Richard pointed a finger in my face. "You sit there and keep your mouth shut. If you make one more scene, I swear to God I will put you in a nursing home today." They walked back to the dining room and shut the kitchen door. I sat there shaking, listening to them laugh on the other side of the wood. I heard the clinking of wine glasses, the joyful chatter, the Merry Christmas cheers, while I sat alone in a dark kitchen. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. I thought about calling the police. But to say what? That my children refused to let me sit at the dinner table? I thought about calling Mr. Davis, but it was Christmas Eve. He was probably with his family. So I did the only thing I could do. I hit record. I opened the voice memo app on my phone and recorded everything. Their laughter, the party, the fact that I was isolated in the kitchen. Evidence. I needed evidence. I sat there for an hour, maybe two. I did not take a single bite of food. My stomach was completely tied in knots. Then I heard the kitchen door slowly creak open. It was my oldest granddaughter, Sophie, who was 8 years old. She looked at me with wide eyes. "Grandma, why are you sitting in here all by yourself?" Her voice was so innocent, so sweet. "Because the adults decided this was best, sweetheart. But it is so sad. Do you not want to eat with us?" "I do want to, honey. But they will not let me." She looked thoroughly confused. Emily suddenly appeared at the door. "Sophie, get over here. Leave your grandmother alone." "But Mom, Grandma is all alone in here. She is on time out. Come here. Time out." I, a 73-year-old woman, was on a timeout for demanding basic respect. Sophie walked away, and the door clicked shut once again. Sitting in that cold, dark kitchen, I made my final decision. I was not going to wait for the legal process to play out while living there. I was not going to try to reason with them anymore. I was not going to beg for crumbs of affection. I was going to do exactly what I had to do. Protect what was mine and walk out of that house with my dignity, no matter how much it hurt. I grabbed my phone and sent Mr. Davis a text message, even though it was Christmas. They locked me in the kitchen. "I have audio recordings. I need to get out of this house. Please help me." I did not expect a reply, but my phone buzzed 5 minutes later. "Not tomorrow, but bright and early on December 26th, you are leaving that house. Stay strong. You are not alone." I was not alone. Those words gave me the strength to survive the night. I barely slept that Christmas night, or rather, I did not sleep at all. I lay in my cramped room, listening to the noise of the house until the early hours. People laughing, music playing, glasses clinking. When the house finally fell silent, it must have been around 3 in the morning. The silence felt heavier than the noise. I was up with the sun. It was Christmas Day, but it certainly did not feel like it, at least not to me. I got ready, packed a duffel bag with a few changes of clothes, all my important documents, and my cash. It was not an escape. It was preparation. If I was leaving on the 26th, I needed to be ready. I slipped out of my room quietly. The house was completely still. Everyone was sleeping off the party. I walked to the kitchen and brewed a pot of coffee. The dining table was still a disaster zone in the living room, covered in dirty plates and half-eaten leftovers. Sarah was definitely going to order me to clean it all up, just like always, but not today. I sat with my mug and waited. I waited for the sun to fully rise, for the house to finally wake up. Around 10 in the morning, Mark wandered in, looking groggy in wrinkled shorts and a t-shirt. He saw me in the kitchen and scowled. "Good morning," I said. He grunted something incoherent and made a beeline for the refrigerator. He pulled out the orange juice and drank straight from the carton. I used to scold him for that. I would tell him to use a glass. Today, I did not say a word. He was no longer my little boy. He was a stranger occupying my home. "Are you still throwing a tantrum, Mom?" he asked, not bothering to look at me. "It is not a tantrum, Mark. It is justice." He let out a short, mocking laugh. "Justice. You sue your own flesh and blood and call it justice. He stole from me. He orchestrated the whole thing. You do not understand any of how this works, Mom. You better just stay quiet before you lose everything. That thinly veiled threat chilled me to the bone. Lose what? I had already lost everything. I lost my children. I lost my place in the family. I lost my respect. What else was there to lose? Mark stared at me. For one fleeting second, just a fraction of a moment, I saw a glimmer of doubt in his eyes, as if some tiny, buried part of him remembered that I was his mother. But it vanished just as quickly. You have lost your mind. That is what happened. And he walked out. The day dragged on. Richard and Sarah woke up late, complaining about their hangovers. Nobody spoke a word to me unless it was to bark an order. Clean this, wash that, put this away. Like I was the hired help. I did it all in silence. It was no longer out of a sense of duty. It was pure strategy. I just had to make it to the 26th. In the late afternoon, the doorbell rang. Richard went to answer it. I heard murmurs at the front door. A hushed conversation. Then he walked back into the living room, looking pale. Who was it? Sarah asked. A neighbor, asking if everything was okay, if my mom was all right. He said he heard screaming last night. Sarah rolled her eyes. And what did you tell him? I told him everything was fine, that my mom gets a little confused sometimes, but that she is well taken care of. He glared at me furiously. Because of you, the whole neighborhood is going to start gossiping. Because of me? I said softly. I did not do anything except exist. Existing is exactly the problem, Sarah spat. You should be ashamed of yourself, Martha. You should be grateful. We gave you a roof over your head, food to eat, and this is how you repay us? With lawsuits and public scenes? Grateful. As if living in my own legally owned house was some grand, charitable favor they were doing for me. I took a deep breath and said the truest thing I could possibly say. Gratitude is earned through respect, and you all lost respect for me a long time ago. Richard slammed his fist on the table. That is enough. I do not want to hear another word out of your mouth today. Perfect, I said, standing up. I do not want to speak to any of you either. I walked back to my room and locked the door. I lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. I thought about my entire life, about the decades of grueling work, about the early mornings waking up in the dark to cook breakfast for my husband and my boys before heading out to scrub floors, about the times I refused to buy myself a new dress so I could pay their school tuition, about the nights I cried from pure exhaustion but never once gave up. And it all led me right here. An old woman, entirely alone, kicked away from the Christmas table by the very children I raised. But then I remembered something else. I remembered the day Arthur died. He was lying in that hospital bed, incredibly weak, his time running out. He squeezed my hand and said, Martha, you are strong. You are stronger than I am. Take care of our boys, but make sure you take care of yourself, too. Promise me? I had promised him, but I never kept that promise. I took care of my children my entire life and completely forgot about myself. Until now. Night fell again, bringing with it a heavy, oppressive silence. The party was over. The guests were gone. It was just the family. And this family wanted me to be invisible. December 26th dawned gray and cloudy. I woke up early, got dressed, and grabbed my duffel bag. At exactly 7 in the morning, my cell phone rang. It was Mr. Davis. Good morning, Martha. I am on my way. Wait by the front door. I will be there in 20 minutes. Thank you. My voice cracked with emotion. Thank you, truly. I walked out of my room, holding my bag tightly. Richard was in the living room drinking a cup of coffee. He saw me and frowned. Where exactly do you think you are going? I am leaving, I said plainly. Going where? Somewhere, where I can finally have peace. He let out a loud laugh. With what money? You have absolutely nothing. I have my Social Security savings, and I have my dignity. That is already far more than you could ever offer me. Sarah stepped into the room. Are you running away? I am not running away. I am walking out of my house. Your house? Sarah took a step closer. This house is ours now. You are the one who should have packed up and left years ago. I heard a car honk outside. It was the lawyer. I started walking toward the front door, but Richard grabbed my arm tightly. "You are not going anywhere." I looked down at his hand gripping my arm. Then I looked him straight in the eyes. "Let go of me. No, let go of me, or I will scream so loud this entire neighborhood will hear it." He hesitated, and in that split second of doubt, I yanked my arm away and walked out the door. I walked straight down the driveway. I opened the front gate, and there was Mr. Davis's car waiting. I got in quickly. Richard ran out to the fence, screaming at the top of his lungs. "You are going to regret this. You are going to end up on the streets. You are going to die entirely alone, and no one will shed a tear for you." His words were meant to be daggers, but I refused to let them cut me anymore. The lawyer put the car in drive, and we pulled away. I looked out the passenger window. I saw my house, the house I helped build, fading into the distance. I saw Richard screaming at the gate. I saw Sarah standing on the porch with a smug look of victory, and I did not feel an ounce of pity. I felt entirely free. Mr. Davis drove me to a modest motel in downtown Austin. It was not fancy, but it was incredibly clean and felt safe. He paid for 3 nights up front and told me, "Martha, you stay right here while we get everything organized. Do not worry about paying for anything right now." I wanted to cry out of sheer gratitude, but I held it together. "I will pay you back, Mr. Davis. I have my money. I know you do, but just rest for now. We will talk about our next steps tomorrow." He left, and I was all alone in that motel room. It was not very big. It had a queen-sized bed, a small table, and an old television, but it was mine. No one was going to order me around. No one was going to humiliate me. I sat on the edge of the bed, and I finally let the tears flow. I cried for everything I had kept bottled up inside. I cried for the family I had lost, for the unconditional love I gave and never received in return, for the decades I wasted trying to please people who did not even care about me. But amidst all the crying, I felt something incredibly strange. It was not just sadness, it was utter relief. A massive wave of relief that I was no longer trapped in that house, no longer subjected to their looks of disgust, no longer forced to be invisible. For the first time in years, I could finally breathe. I stayed in that motel for 3 days. Mr. Davis came back with updates. "We secured a temporary injunction. Your son cannot sell or transfer the property in the Hill Country until the trial is concluded. As for the house, we are filing an eviction lawsuit to reclaim the property. You are the sole legal owner, but they live there," I said. "Yes, and they will either have to vacate the premises or start paying you fair market rent. The choice is entirely theirs." My heart skipped a beat. "They are going to hate me even more." "Martha," he said, looking at me very seriously, "they already hate you. The only difference now is that you are finally protecting yourself." He was absolutely right. There was no turning back now. Over the next few days, my cell phone started blowing up. Endless messages from Richard, from Mark, from Sarah, from Emily. They all parroted the exact same things. That I was evil, ungrateful, completely selfish, that I was going to die alone, that not a single one of them would ever forgive me. I read them all, and then I deleted them. I did not reply to a single text. Everything I had left to say, I was going to say it inside a courtroom. A week later, Mr. Davis helped me secure a place to live. It was a tiny studio apartment in a much quieter, older neighborhood, but it was exactly what I could afford with my Social Security checks. It had 0 luxuries, but it was filled with absolute peace. I moved in with the few belongings I had taken: 1 duffel bag of clothes, my important documents, and my memories. Everything else was left behind, and I was perfectly fine with that. I learned what it truly meant to live alone. I cooked my own meals. I kept my little corner of the world spotless. I watched television without anyone complaining. I went to the grocery store and bought exactly what I wanted. I went to sleep whenever I felt like it. It was a very small slice of freedom, but it belonged entirely to me. A month later, Richard showed up at the front door of my apartment building. I have no idea how he managed to track down my address. He looked significantly thinner, with dark circles under his eyes. He knocked, and I opened the door. "Mom?" His voice was weak, barely above a whisper. I stood firmly in the doorway, making no move to invite him inside. "What do you want, Richard?" "I came here to talk, to ask you to please drop the lawsuit." I let out a hollow laugh. "You kicked me away from the dinner table, you locked me in the kitchen, you stole my land, and now you are begging me to drop the lawsuit?" "Mom, please. The lawyer fees are draining us dry. Sarah wants a divorce. My whole life is falling apart." And he wanted me to feel sorry for him. "Richard, for the very first time in your entire life, you are going to have to face the consequences of your own actions. I am not going to rescue you this time. But I am your son, and I am your mother." But that did not stop you from treating me like actual garbage. He closed his eyes. He took a shaky breath. When he opened them again, his eyes were wet with tears. "Mom, I messed up. I know I did wrong." Those words, the exact words I had waited my whole life to hear, finally arrived. But they arrived far too late. "Richard, if you had just treated me with basic respect, absolutely none of this would have happened. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them." He stood there for a few more minutes, desperately trying to change my mind, but I refused to budge an inch. Eventually, he turned around and walked away, his head hanging low, and I shut the door, feeling, for the very first time, that I had done exactly the right thing. Months rolled by, and the legal battle progressed. The judge ruled that Richard had to transfer the deed to the Texas Hill Country land back into my name and pay a substantial fine for elder financial exploitation. As for the house, the court ruled that if they wished to remain there, they had to pay me rent. Fair market rent. Richard tried to file an appeal, but he lost completely. The verdict was crystal clear. He had preyed on my trust and my old age to defraud me. The judge was brutal in his closing remarks. He stated on the record that it was entirely unacceptable for any son to treat his mother in such a despicable manner. When I got the news, I was in my little apartment cooking dinner. "Mr. Davis called me, sounding incredibly thrilled. "Martha, we won. Across the board. The land is legally yours again. So is the house. They have 30 days to vacate the property or sign a lease to start paying rent." I sat down on my kitchen chair and let the weight of the news settle over me. Justice. Justice had finally arrived. I did not cry out of pure joy. I cried out of sheer exhaustion, out of absolute relief, and out of the deep pain of having been pushed to such extreme measures. Because deep down in my heart, I never wanted to sue my own children. I just wanted them to love me. I wanted them to respect me. I wanted to be a real mother to them, not just a name on a piece of paper. But life is not always what we want. It is what we are forced to accept and what we choose to change. Richard did not pay the rent. He chose to move out. He and Sarah moved into a much smaller, cramped apartment in a bad part of town. Mark and Emily also packed up and moved into her parents' house. My house was completely empty. "Mr. Davis suggested, you can move back into your old house, or you can put it on the rental market and generate a nice extra income for yourself." I thought about it long and hard. That house held so many memories, wonderful ones and terrible ones. Arthur and I were so incredibly happy there. I raised my boys inside those walls. But I was also degraded there, kicked out, treated like a nuisance. I decided to rent it out. I simply could not go back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. A young family ended up renting the property. A nice couple with 2 small children. They always paid their rent right on time. They took beautiful care of the property, and I used that extra money to vastly improve my own quality of life, to live with absolute peace of mind. Several months later, on a sweltering afternoon in March, I was walking down the aisle at the grocery store when I bumped right into Mark. He was pushing a shopping cart, with Emily walking right beside him. They saw me and froze in their tracks. I stopped pushing my cart, too. It was an incredibly awkward silence. Finally, Mark spoke up. "Hi, Mom." "Hello," I replied dryly. Emily glared at me with absolute fury, but she kept her mouth firmly shut. Mark looked terrible. He looked aged, beaten down by life. "How are you doing?" he asked. "I am doing just fine. And you?" "Well, you know, just getting by." He looked down at his shoes. "Mom. E." He started a sentence, but let it trail off. I waited, but he never finished it. Emily yanked on the shopping cart. "Let us go, Mark. We are going to be late." They walked away, and I stood there frozen in the middle of the supermarket aisle, gripping the handle of my cart, feeling a massive, hollow ache in my chest. Because a small piece of my heart still wanted to run down that aisle, throw my arms around him, and forgive him for everything. But the other part of me, the part that finally learned how to respect herself, kept my feet firmly planted on the linoleum floor. I went back to my apartment. I put all my groceries away. I sat down on the vintage armchair I had bought at a local flea market. I turned on the television and tried to focus on anything else, but my mind would not stop racing. Was I being too harsh? Should I have just forgiven him right then and there? Then I remembered the day they locked me in the dark kitchen. I remembered their cruel laughter. I remembered the deed to the stolen land. And I realized that I had not been harsh. I had been fair. Someday, perhaps, they would finally understand. Perhaps they would offer a genuine apology, not one driven by a fear of legal consequences, but rooted in actual, profound remorse. And if that day ever came, I would decide whether or not I had the capacity to forgive them. But in the meantime, I was actually living. I woke up early, brewed my coffee, went about my day. I discovered a deep passion for embroidery. I bought fine threads, wooden hoops, and spent my long afternoons embroidering beautiful napkins and tablecloths. I started selling a few pieces at a weekend farmer's market near my apartment. It was not a massive amount of money, but the immense joy of creating something beautiful with my own two hands was entirely priceless. I became fast friends with Betty, the woman who lived next door. She was also a widow, also living completely on her own. We would drink our afternoon coffee together, trade stories, and laugh for hours. She did not know the dark details of my past, and I never felt the need to burden her with them. It was just wonderful to have real companionship, entirely free of judgment or demands. I quickly learned that experiencing loneliness is completely different from choosing to be alone. Loneliness is when you are surrounded by a crowded room, but not a single person actually sees you. Being alone is a conscious choice, and it can be absolute freedom. About a year after the lawsuit ended, on a quiet Saturday afternoon, my cell phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something deep in my gut told me to pick it up. "Hello? Grandma?" It was Sophie, my granddaughter. My chest instantly tightened. "Sophie? Sweetheart, is that you?" "Yes, Grandma. I sneaked my mom's phone to call you. I really wanted to talk to you." I felt my throat closing up completely. "How are you doing, sweetie?" "I am good, but I miss you. I miss you so much." Tears immediately began to spill down my cheeks. "I miss you too, my sweet girl. More than you know. Why do you never come to visit us anymore?" How do you explain to a child that the adults in her family threw me out like trash? How could I tell her that her own parents despised me? It is very complicated, Sophie, but please know it is absolutely not your fault. You did not do a single thing wrong. My dad said you turned into a bad person. He said you sued everybody. I had to protect myself, sweetheart. Sometimes adults do very bad things, and you have to stand up and defend yourself. But you are my grandma. I just want to see you. My soul shattered into a million pieces. I want to see you too, baby, more than anything in the world. Then come over. Tomorrow is my birthday. I am going to be 9 years old. Please come, Grandma. Please. I had absolutely no idea what to say. Walking back into that house meant facing Mark, facing Emily, maybe even running into Richard. It meant risking more insults, risking being thrown out all over again. Sophie, I am not sure your parents would want me there. I want you there, and it is my birthday. You can come. You really can. Her tiny voice, so full of pure hope, completely broke my resolve. Sweetheart, let me think about it, okay? I promise I will call you back. Please, Grandma. Please come. I hung up the phone with my heart completely torn in two. Betty was sitting in my living room, sipping her coffee. She saw the look on my face and asked, "What is going on, Martha?" I poured out the whole story to her. She listened quietly until I finished, and then she said, "And do you want to go?" "I want to see my granddaughter, but I refuse to let them humiliate me ever again." "Then go," she said plainly, "but go fully prepared. Bring a nice gift for the little girl. Stay exactly as long as you need to, and then walk right out that door. You do not owe those people a single thing, but you absolutely owe it to yourself to live a life without regrets. She was completely right. That evening, I went out and bought a beautiful present for Sophie, a gorgeous doll I knew she had been begging for, and I wrapped it with so much love. The next morning, Sunday, I got dressed up. I put on my best dress, applied a nice shade of lipstick, and pinned my hair up perfectly. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw an entirely different woman, thinner, perhaps a bit more tired, but standing tall, standing firm. I took the city bus all the way to Mark's house. My heart was pounding furiously against my ribs, but I kept moving forward, for Sophie, and for myself. I arrived right around noon. The front yard was decorated with brightly colored balloons. Children were running around playing in the grass. I took a massive breath and knocked firmly on the front door. Emily opened it. The second she laid eyes on me, her entire face twisted in absolute disgust. "What exactly do you want here?" "I came to see my granddaughter. It is her birthday." "You were not invited. She invited me." Emily was just about to slam the heavy door right in my face when Sophie came sprinting down the hallway. "Grandma, you actually came." She threw her arms around my waist, hugging me so fiercely, and I felt my entire world light up. I squeezed that little girl as if she were the only thing that mattered on this earth, because in that exact moment, she was. "I came, sweetheart. Happy birthday." I handed her the wrapped box. She tore into it right there in the entryway and squealed with pure delight when she saw the doll. "Thank you, Grandma. I love it so much." Mark stepped into the hallway, his face just as tight and angry as his wife's. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I came to see my granddaughter on her birthday. That is all. I am not staying long. I just wanted to give her a hug and bring her a gift, and then I will leave." He looked at Emily, then back at me. He looked deeply exhausted, incredibly sad. "Fine, come inside, but absolutely no drama." I stepped in slowly. The living room was packed with people, other kids, other parents. Everyone stopped and stared at me like I was a complete intruder. I walked over to the table loaded with cake and candy. Sophie refused to let go of my hand. She showed me all her new toys. She introduced me to her best friends. She rambled on about her favorite subjects in school, and for just a few precious minutes, I completely forgot about all the ugliness. The only thing that mattered was seeing that child smile. Until Richard walked in. He came through the front door, spotted me, and froze in his tracks. We locked eyes. He looked much older now, his hair thinning, his stomach heavier. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes. Sarah was nowhere in sight. He walked over to me. "Mom." "Richard." Sophie looked back and forth between the two of us, sensing the heavy tension in the air. "I am going to go play in the yard, Grandma." And she darted off. We were completely alone in the corner of the room. A suffocating silence hung between us. "I had no idea you were coming," he said in a low voice. "Sophie invited me." He nodded slowly. He stayed quiet for a long moment, then finally blurted it out. "Sarah left me. She took everything, even the living room furniture." A dark part of my mind desperately wanted to say, "You absolutely deserve it," but I kept my mouth shut. I just listened. "I lost everything, Mom. The land, the house, my wife, the respect of my peers. I completely ruined my entire life." He was actively crying now, real tears rolling down his face, and I still did not feel an ounce of pity. All I felt was a profound sadness. Sadness for the hollow man he had chosen to become, for the beloved son I had lost. "Richard, you did not lose everything because of the lawsuit. You lost everything because you treated the people who truly loved you like absolute garbage, and actions have very real consequences." "I know," he sobbed quietly. "I know that, Mom. And I am so sorry. I truly am." I looked at him closely. For the first time in years, I saw genuine sincerity. It was not a desperate, manipulative apology meant to gain leverage. It was authentic, crushing remorse. But remorse does not magically erase years of agony. It does not rewind the clock. "Richard, I accept your apology. But accepting it does not mean everything magically goes back to the way it used to be. You cut me incredibly deep. I know I do not deserve your forgiveness. It is not a matter of deserving it. It is a matter of whether or not I have the capacity to give it. And right now, I simply do not. Perhaps someday." He nodded his head slowly. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "Thank you for coming today. Sophie is overjoyed. I have not seen her this happy in a very long time. She is a wonderful little girl. Take care of her. Do not ever let her turn into what you became." It was a tough pill to swallow, but it was the absolute truth. He did not say a word back. He just stood there, staring at the floor. I stayed for about half an hour longer. I watched Sophie blow out her candles. Then I said my goodbyes. I wrapped my arms around my granddaughter and kissed her forehead. "Grandma, please come back soon, okay?" "I will, my sweet girl. As soon as I possibly can." I walked out of that house, with my heart completely torn in half. It still hurt. It hurt so incredibly much. But I had shown up. I faced them down. And I walked out with my head held high. The months that followed were a time of quiet, steady rebuilding. I continued my simple life in my apartment, working on my embroidery, drinking coffee with Betty, strolling through the local flea markets. Slowly but surely, I learned how to navigate life without expecting a single thing from my children, without waiting by the phone for calls, or visits, or grand apologies. And it was incredibly liberating. Sophie would sneak phone calls to me every now and then. We would chat very quickly. She would fill me in on school drama and her friends. I listened to every word with an aching heart, but I was endlessly grateful for those stolen minutes. It was all I had, and it was enough. Richard tried to reach out a few more times. He would send a text message every couple of weeks, just checking in to see how I was doing. I always replied politely, but kept it very brief. I was just not ready for anything more. Perhaps I never will be, and that is perfectly fine, too. As for the land they tried to steal from me, I sold it. Mr. Davis helped me find a very reputable buyer who paid top dollar for the acreage. With that money, I paid off a few small debts, made some lovely upgrades to my apartment, and bought a few beautiful pieces of furniture. And I tucked a large chunk away in the bank for any future emergencies. Because life taught me the hard way that you never truly know what is coming next. About a year and a half, after all the dust settled, on a crisp October afternoon, I was sitting on the bench outside my apartment complex doing some needlework when Sophie suddenly appeared, completely by herself. My heart almost leapt right out of my throat. "Sophie, how on earth did you get here?" "I took the city bus by myself. I saved the address you gave me on my birthday." A 10-year-old girl, navigating the city bus system all by herself just to come see me. I honestly did not know whether to strictly scold her or pull her into the tightest hug of my life. "Does your dad have any idea you are here?" "No, but I really needed to see you. I brought you something." She reached into her small backpack and pulled out a drawing. It was a picture of the two of us, holding hands tightly, surrounded by a massive red heart. At the bottom, she had written, "I love my grandma." I completely broke down. I cried harder than I had cried in a very long time. I wrapped my arms around that brave little girl and thanked God above that I still had someone in this world who genuinely loved me. "I love you too, my sweet girl. More than anything in this entire world." I immediately called Mark to let him know she was safe with me so he would not panic. He drove over to pick her up about an hour later. When he walked up to my door, he looked at me differently. His eyes were much softer. "Thank you for keeping her safe, Mom. You know she is always welcome here." He nodded slowly. I was wrong. About everything. You did not deserve a single ounce of what we put you through." "No, I certainly did not." He looked down at his feet. "Someday, if you are ever willing to let me, I would really like to try again. Not the way things used to be, but different. Better." I looked at him, and for the first time in years I saw my son again. Not the cruel stranger who broke my heart, but the little boy I raised. There was still deep resentment inside of me. The wounds still ached, but a tiny, fragile door was slowly cracking open. Someday, Mark. Perhaps someday. Today, at 75 years old, I live my life in total peace. It is absolutely not the life I envisioned when I was a young woman. It is not the picture-perfect family dynamic I desperately tried to hold together, but it is my life. And I learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes, the greatest justice is not destroying the people who shattered you. It is entirely rebuilding yourself. They kicked me away from their dinner table. So I built my own table. They stole my property. I fought to get it back, sold it, and used it to fund a beautiful life. They tried to strip me of my dignity. I held my head high and marched straight forward. It was absolutely not easy. There were countless nights I cried myself to sleep until my eyes swelled shut. There were days I wanted to throw in the towel completely, but I never surrendered, because I deserved basic human respect, and if they refused to give it to me, I was going to demand it for myself. Today, I embroider. I sell my crafts at the market. I drink coffee with my dear friends. I cherish every single moment with my granddaughter when she comes to visit. And I am genuinely happy. A quiet, peaceful, beautiful kind of happiness. If you are listening to this right now, no matter where you are in the world, I need you to know one thing. It is never too late to stand up for yourself. It is never too late to demand the respect you deserve. And never, under any circumstances, allow anyone, not even your own flesh and blood, to treat you like a doormat. Because at the end of the day, the only person you have to sleep beside and answer to is yourself. And I sleep beautifully. Finally, after all these years, I sleep in absolute peace. If this story touched your heart, please leave a comment down below. Let me know if you have ever gone through something similar. If you have ever been forced to choose between keeping the peace with your family and keeping your own dignity. And if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and turn on the notification bell. Your support means the absolute world and helps me continue bringing real, impactful stories just like this one to light. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time.